Guys, tonight we follow the quiet footsteps of a woman who has whispered the same prayer into the darkness for so many nights that even the walls of her tiny home seem to know every word by heart. She believes that somewhere beyond the stars, beyond the clouds, beyond everything the eye can see, someone is listening. Whether that prayer will ever be answered, well, that's a mystery we'll slowly uncover together. And fair warning, you probably won't survive this story with dry eyes. Or, if you're already tucked into bed, you probably won't survive staying awake until the ending. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, let me know where you're listening from and what your local time is. It's always wonderful to imagine people from every corner of the world sharing these quiet moments together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The village sleeps long before the stars finish their climb across the sky. Wooden doors are latched, lanterns fade one by one. The breeze carries the scent of earth that cooled after a warm day, and somewhere in the distance, an owl announces that the night truly belongs to itself. You walk these silent paths in your imagination, noticing how every house seems to cradle its own hopes and worries behind closed windows. Some families dream of good harvests, others pray for health. A few simply hope tomorrow will be kinder than today. At the edge of the village stands a modest little cottage. Nothing about it would catch the attention of a traveler. Its roof has weathered countless storms. Its garden blooms only when the seasons are generous, and its porch creaks softly whenever the wind remembers to visit. Inside lives a woman named Hannah. Every evening follows nearly the same rhythm. She tidies the small kitchen, folds a faded blanket with careful hands, lights a single candle, and sits beside the window, where moonlight gently spills across the wooden floor. Only then does she begin to pray, not loudly, not with dramatic gestures, just a whisper so soft it almost disappears before leaving her lips. Night after night, month after month, year after year. She never asks for riches, she never prays for fame. Her request is simple, though it carries the weight of her entire heart. Lord, if it is your will, please send the miracle only you can give. The words never change. Some evenings tears accompany them. Other nights only silence answers. Yet somehow she continues. There is something remarkable about people who keep praying after the world tells them to stop. They don't always look extraordinary. They still wake before sunrise. They still carry water, sweep floors, mend clothes, and greet neighbors with tired smiles. But deep inside, they protect a tiny flame of hope. Hannah guards that flame as though it were the last candle. In a world growing steadily darker, she doesn't know that, beyond her understanding, countless small events have already begun moving like pieces across an enormous tapestry. None of them seem connected. A traveler chooses one road instead of another. A letter arrives late. A storm changes direction by only a few miles. Somewhere, someone decides to show kindness instead of anger. Each choice seems ordinary. Together they quietly prepare the answer to a prayer that has not yet arrived. And that is often how miracles begin. Not with thunder, but with gentle moments no one notices until much later. The next morning arrives quietly, almost as though the sun is careful not to wake the dreams that linger in every sleeping home. You step outside with the cool air brushing against your face. Dew clings to blades of grass, sparkling like tiny jewels scattered across the earth. Somewhere nearby, a robin greets the dawn with a cheerful melody, reminding everyone willing to listen that every new day begins with another chance. The woman from our story, whose gentle faith has carried her through countless evenings, starts her morning the same way she always does. She thanks God before her feet touch the wooden floor, not because every prayer has been answered, but because another day itself feels like a quiet gift. She carries a bucket to the village well. The path is familiar, worn smooth by years of footsteps. Neighbors greet one another with sleepy smiles. Some are cheerful, while others wear the weight of worries they rarely speak aloud. Everyone is carrying something. Some burdens can be seen. Others remain hidden beneath kind smiles. As she fills the bucket, an elderly woman beside her sighs softly. "It feels like heaven has forgotten me," the woman whispers. Our traveler pauses. Instead of offering a perfect answer, she simply smiles and says, "Perhaps heaven is still writing your story." The older woman nods thoughtfully. Sometimes people don't need explanations. Sometimes they simply need someone willing to believe beside them. The morning passes with ordinary tasks: sweeping the porch, watering flowers, preparing bread, mending worn clothing. Each simple act becomes its own quiet prayer. There is something beautiful about ordinary faith. It rarely announces itself. It grows quietly, like roots beneath the soil, unseen by everyone except the one who planted them. As afternoon sunlight warms the little cottage, a gentle breeze stirs the curtains. The woman opens her Bible to a page that seems almost worn from years of reading. Her eyes rest on familiar words. Hope does not disappoint. She smiles, not because she fully understands them, but because she has chosen to trust them. Outside, clouds slowly gather over distant hills. Rain begins to fall in soft, steady drops. Children laugh as they run home through the village streets. The earth drinks deeply. Flowers lift their faces. The trees sway peacefully. Rain has a way of reminding you that not every season of waiting is empty. Some seasons are quietly preparing new life beneath the surface. That evening she lights the same candle once again. Its flame dances gently as shadows move across the wooden walls. Everything appears exactly as it did the night before. The same chair, the same window, the same whispered prayer. Yet something has changed, not outside. Inside, hope has become a little steadier, a little calmer, less desperate, more trusting. She no longer prays only for a miracle. She prays for the strength to remain faithful, whether the miracle comes tomorrow, next year, or in ways she could never imagine. Beyond the little cottage, countless unseen events continue unfolding. A traveler chooses a different road. A family decides to help a stranger. A child discovers unexpected kindness. None of these moments seem connected, but life often weaves invisible threads long before anyone notices the finished picture. As the stars slowly appear overhead, the woman blows out the candle and looks through the window one last time. The sky is brilliantly clear. Thousands of stars shimmer like tiny promises scattered across the heavens. She smiles, not because every question has been answered, but because she is beginning to understand something precious. Faith is not believing that tomorrow will be easy. Faith is believing that you will never walk through tomorrow alone. She closes her eyes. The room grows still. Outside, crickets sing their gentle nighttime song. Above, the stars continue shining exactly where they have always been. And somewhere beyond what human eyes can see, the first pieces of an extraordinary answer are already moving into place, quietly, patiently, perfectly on time. The afternoon drifts gently into evening, and the village settles into its familiar rhythm. You notice something different, not because the world has changed overnight, but because your heart has begun to see what it once overlooked. The woman follows her usual path through the village, greeting neighbors with a warm smile. A child waves excitedly as she passes. An elderly gardener offers her a freshly picked white flower, saying, "Sometimes the smallest gifts carry the greatest meaning." She accepts it with quiet gratitude. As she walks home, a pair of bluebirds land on a wooden fence just ahead of her. They sing for a moment before taking flight together into the golden sky. She pauses, smiling to herself. It feels like a gentle reminder that even the smallest moments can whisper hope. Back inside her cottage, she places the flower beside her open Bible. The room is peaceful. Sunlight filters through the curtains, painting soft patterns across the wooden floor. She opens the Bible to a passage she has read many times before, yet today the words seem fresh, as though they were waiting for this exact moment. "Do not be afraid, for I am with you." She closes her eyes, repeating the words quietly. Outside, the breeze carries the sweet scent of blooming wildflowers. The trees sway gently, and distant church bells echo across the valley. Nothing extraordinary happens. No voice from heaven, no brilliant light. Only peace, and somehow, that peace feels like its own miracle. As night falls, she lights her familiar candle once again. Its small flame flickers steadily, filling the cottage with warmth. She kneels beside her bed. This time, her prayer is different. Instead of asking, she begins by saying, "Thank you." She thanks God for another sunrise, for kind neighbors, for the strength to keep believing, for hope that refuses to disappear. When her prayer ends, she looks through the window. Above her, countless stars shimmer across the sky. Far beyond what she can see, unseen pieces of her story continue moving into place, preparing an answer more beautiful than she could ever imagine. The following morning arrives wrapped in a gentle blanket of mist. The world feels quieter than usual, as though the village itself is holding its breath. You follow the winding path that leads beyond the fields, where an old stone chapel stands among towering oak trees. Its weathered walls have witnessed countless prayers over the years, and its wooden doors remain open to anyone seeking a moment of peace. The woman has no special reason to visit today, or so she believes. She simply feels a quiet nudge in her heart, a gentle invitation she cannot explain. Inside the chapel, colorful light streams through stained glass windows, painting soft shades of blue, gold, and crimson across the wooden floor. The room is silent, except for the faint chirping of birds outside. She kneels in the last pew. Her prayer is short, "Lord, help me trust your timing." When she opens her eyes, she notices an elderly traveler seated a few rows ahead. His silver hair catches the morning light, and a weathered walking staff rests beside him. Though his clothes are simple, his calm smile carries a quiet warmth. As he prepares to leave, he pauses beside her. "You've been praying for something important," he says gently. The woman looks surprised. "I have," she replies softly. The traveler nods, not asking what it is. Instead, he says, "The longest winters often prepare the brightest spring." For a moment, neither of them speaks. The words settle gently into the silence. Then he reaches into his small satchel and offers her a simple wooden cross, carved by hand. "When waiting becomes difficult," he says, "hold this, and remember that hope grows even when you cannot see it." She accepts the small gift with grateful hands. Before she can ask his name, the traveler smiles kindly and walks through the chapel doors into the morning mist. She steps outside only a few moments later. The path is empty. The old traveler is nowhere to be seen. Only the gentle breeze moves through the oak trees, carrying the scent of fresh rain and wildflowers. She looks down at the little wooden cross resting in her palm. It is plain, simple, yet somehow it fills her heart with unexpected peace. As she begins the walk home, sunlight slowly breaks through the clouds, bathing the countryside in warm golden light. For the first time in many years, her steps feel lighter, not because her miracle has arrived, but because she is beginning to believe that heaven has been walking beside her all along. Far beyond the quiet village, unseen pieces of her story continue falling perfectly into place, preparing a future more beautiful than she has ever dared imagine. The days that follow are filled with quiet expectation. The little wooden cross now rests beside the woman's Bible, a simple reminder that hope can remain steady, even when answers seem far away. One afternoon, the sky begins to change. Bright blue slowly fades behind thick gray clouds. A cool wind sweeps across the fields, bending the tall grass in gentle waves. Farmers pause their work and glance toward the horizon, sensing that a powerful storm is on its way. The woman gathers the freshly washed clothes from the clothesline and hurries toward her cottage. Before long, the first raindrops begin to fall. At first they are soft, then faster, then harder. Thunder rolls across the valley, echoing through the hills like distant drums. Inside the cottage, she closes the shutters and lights a single candle. The warm glow pushes back the darkness, creating a small circle of comfort in the middle of the storm. She picks up the wooden cross and holds it gently. The words of the elderly traveler return to her heart. "The longest winters often prepare the brightest spring." She whispers those words again. Outside, the wind howls around the cottage. Rain taps against the windows. Branches sway beneath the strength of the storm. For a brief moment, fear tries to return. Questions begin to whisper. What if nothing ever changes? What if I've been waiting for nothing? She closes her eyes. Instead of chasing those thoughts, she offers them quietly to God. "Even if I cannot see the road ahead," she prays, "help me keep taking the next faithful step." Slowly, peace replaces fear, not because the storm has ended, because her heart has become calmer. Hours later, the rain begins to soften. The thunder grows distant. Clouds slowly drift apart. She opens the cottage door. Fresh air fills the evening. Tiny raindrops sparkle on every leaf, like countless diamonds, catching the last light of sunset. In the distance, a beautiful rainbow stretches across the valley. The woman smiles. Nature seems to whisper the same truth her heart is beginning to believe. Storms never last forever. Sometimes they leave behind the clearest skies. Holding the small wooden cross close, she watches the rainbow glow against the fading clouds. Far beyond what human eyes can see, unseen pieces of her journey continue moving together with perfect timing. The miracle has not arrived, but hope has become stronger than fear. And for tonight, that is more than enough. Morning arrives with a stillness that feels different from the days before. The storm has washed the village clean. Every leaf glistens with tiny drops of water, and the air carries the fresh scent of earth and pine. You step outside with the woman as the first rays of sunlight spread across the fields. The world seems brighter, yet nothing extraordinary has happened. Or has it? She notices something she had been missing all along. For months, perhaps even years, she had measured God's presence by whether her prayer had been answered. Today she begins measuring it by His faithfulness through every unanswered day. The little wooden cross still rests in her hand. It no longer feels like a reminder to keep asking. It feels like a reminder that she has never been alone. She walks toward the small hill overlooking the village. From there she watches smoke rise gently from cottage chimneys, while children laugh in the distance and birds glide across the clear blue sky. Everything appears ordinary, yet her heart is filled with an extraordinary peace. An elderly shepherd passes by with his flock. He smiles warmly and says, "The quietest mornings often follow the loudest storms." She smiles back. His words echo the lesson growing inside her heart. Not every answer arrives with thunder. Some arrive as peace. That evening she returns home and lights her familiar candle. She opens her Bible, places the wooden cross beside it, and whispers a different prayer. "Lord, thank you for teaching me to trust you before I see the answer." For the first time in many years, she falls asleep without fear. Outside, the stars quietly fill the night sky. Far beyond what she can imagine, the final pieces of heaven's plan continue moving closer. The miracle is nearer than ever. She simply doesn't know it yet. Several peaceful days pass, each one gently blending into the next. The village moves through its familiar rhythm, and the woman continues her quiet routine with a heart that feels lighter than before. One cool afternoon, she decides to clean the small attic above her cottage. Dust dances through the beams of sunlight that slip between the wooden boards. Old trunks, worn blankets, and forgotten keepsakes fill the tiny space. Each object seems to carry a memory from another season of life. Near the back of the attic, she notices a weathered wooden chest she has not opened in years. She kneels beside it and slowly lifts the lid. Inside are carefully folded baby clothes that were never worn, a faded family photograph, and a small leather journal tied with a ribbon. For a long moment, she simply looks. Then, with gentle hands, she unties the ribbon and opens the journal. The pages are filled with prayers she had written many years ago. Some ask for courage, others ask for wisdom. Many ask for the miracle she had longed for with all her heart. As she turns another page, a single sentence catches her attention. "Lord, if your answer is different from my dream, help me trust that your plan is better than mine." She reads the words again. A soft smile appears. She had completely forgotten writing that prayer, yet somehow it feels as though it was written for today. She closes the journal and places it beside the little wooden cross. Outside, a gentle breeze rustles the leaves, and sunlight pours through the attic window, filling the room with a warm golden glow. She realizes something she had never fully understood before. God had not only heard the prayers she remembered, He had also heard the ones she had forgotten. Every whispered hope, every silent tear, every quiet act of faith, none of them had been lost. That evening, she lights her candle as always, but instead of asking for a miracle, she thanks God for remembering every promise, even the ones she herself had nearly forgotten. Outside, the stars begin to appear, one by one. Far beyond the quiet village, unseen threads continue weaving together a beautiful story. The answer is drawing closer, and this time, her heart is ready to receive it, whatever form it may take. The next morning begins with a gentle breeze carrying the scent of fresh wildflowers through the village. Sunlight pours across the fields, turning every drop of dew into a tiny sparkle. You walk beside the woman. As she finishes her morning prayer, her heart feels calm. For the first time in many years, she is no longer searching anxiously for a sign. She has learned to treasure each ordinary day as a gift. Just as she reaches for the kettle, a soft knock echoes at her front door. She opens it to find a young mother standing there with a little girl, no older than 6. Their clothes are worn from travel, and dust clings to their shoes. Though they look exhausted, the child offers a shy smile. "I'm sorry to disturb you," the mother says gently. "Our cart broke down outside the village. Someone told us you might be willing to help." Without hesitation, the woman invites them inside. She prepares warm bread, fresh soup, and tea. The little girl quietly thanks her before taking her first bite. Her smile fills the small cottage with unexpected warmth. As the afternoon passes, laughter replaces silence. The child notices the flowers growing beside the window and asks if she may water them. The woman nods with a smile. Watching the little girl care for the flowers stirs something deep within her heart. Not sadness this time, but quiet joy. Before leaving, the young mother reaches into her bag and hands the woman a small envelope. "Someone at the chapel asked me to give this to the kind woman who lives in the cottage by the old oak tree," she explains. Surprised, the woman carefully opens the envelope. Inside is a simple note written in neat handwriting. "Keep your heart open. Sometimes heaven answers prayers by opening a door you never expected to walk through." There is no signature, only those few words. She looks toward the road, hoping to ask who wrote it. But the travelers are already disappearing into the golden afternoon light. She gently folds the note and places it inside her Bible beside the wooden cross and her old journal. 3 simple reminders. 3 quiet gifts, each arriving at exactly the right moment. As evening falls, she stands outside her cottage watching the sunset paint the sky with shades of gold and crimson. She does not know what door heaven is preparing to open. But for the first time, she is no longer afraid to walk through it. The breeze grows softer. The first stars begin to shine. And somewhere beyond the horizon, the answer to her lifelong prayer takes one final step closer. The evening settles gently over the village, wrapping every cottage in quiet shadows. One by one, warm lights appear in the windows as families finish their meals and prepare for rest. You return with the woman to her little cottage. Everything feels familiar. The wooden table, the open Bible, the small hand-carved cross, the folded note tucked safely between its pages. She lights her candle, and its gentle flame fills the room with a soft, comforting glow. For a few moments, she simply sits in silence. No requests, no questions, only gratitude. "Thank you," she whispers. "Whatever tomorrow brings, I trust you." She blows out the candle and prepares for sleep. Outside, the moon hangs high above the countryside, bathing the fields in silver light. The wind has grown completely still. Even the trees seem to rest. Then, a soft knock comes at the door. She opens it. Standing on the porch is the village pastor, holding a lantern. "I'm sorry to come so late," he says kindly. "There's a young family at the chapel. They're in need of help for the night. I immediately thought of you." Without hesitation, she wraps a shawl around her shoulders and follows him through the moonlit village. The chapel is peaceful. Inside, a weary couple sits quietly with a small child asleep in the mother's arms. They have traveled far, searching for a place where they can begin again after losing almost everything. The woman kneels beside them. She offers warm blankets, fresh bread, and gentle words of comfort. The little child slowly opens sleepy eyes and reaches for her hand. For a moment, neither of them speaks. The child simply smiles, a smile so pure, so trusting, that it fills the quiet chapel with unexpected warmth. Tears gather in the woman's eyes, not tears of sadness, tears of peace. She suddenly understands something that had been growing inside her heart all along. Perhaps miracles do not always arrive the way we imagine. Sometimes they begin the moment we become the answer to someone else's prayer. As the family settles in for the night, the pastor smiles gently. "You have a gift," he says. "You make people feel at home." She looks around the quiet chapel. The stained glass windows glow beneath the moonlight. The wooden cross in her pocket rests against her heart. She remembers the mysterious note. Sometimes heaven answers prayers by opening a door you never expected to walk through. A quiet smile appears on her face. The door has begun to open. She simply hadn't recognized it until now. Outside, the stars shine brighter than ever above the sleeping village. Far beyond what anyone can see, heaven's beautiful plan continues unfolding, one quiet act of love at a time. Hey guys, tonight we stand at the edge of a day that begins like any other but somehow ends with your entire world turned upside down. The morning sun feels warm on your face, the coffee tastes familiar, and your plans seem ordinary enough. Yet before the stars return to the sky, everything you believed was secure will have slipped through your fingers. It's the kind of story that makes you wonder whether anyone could possibly keep going after so much loss. And, fair warning, you probably won't survive this, at least not as the same person who woke up this morning. The person who finishes this journey will be different in ways you can't yet imagine. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, let me know where you're listening from and what your local time is right now. It's always comforting to imagine people from every corner of the world sharing these quiet moments together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The morning begins with the sound of your alarm, just as it always has. Nothing feels unusual. You stretch your arms, glance toward the window, and notice the sunlight spilling across the floor. Birds chatter somewhere outside, completely unaware that your life is about to change forever. If someone had told you that by sunset everything familiar would disappear, you would have laughed politely before continuing with your routine. Life has a curious way of keeping its biggest surprises hidden until the last possible moment. You dress for work, check your phone, and notice a few unread emails. Nothing urgent. Nothing alarming. Just another weekday that promises meetings, errands, and perhaps a quiet dinner before bed. You leave home without taking one last look. Funny how we never realize which ordinary moments are actually our final ones. The drive feels peaceful. Traffic moves steadily. The radio hums softly in the background, filling the silence with songs you've heard 100 times before. Your thoughts wander toward weekend plans and unfinished chores. Everything still seems perfectly normal. Then your phone rings. Your manager's name appears on the screen. You answer casually, expecting a routine question. Instead, the voice on the other end sounds unusually serious. Can you come into the conference room as soon as you arrive? Your stomach tightens just a little. Perhaps it's nothing. Perhaps you're simply overthinking. But somewhere deep inside, a quiet instinct begins whispering that today won't unfold the way you expected. By mid-morning, you're sitting across from people who avoid making direct eye contact. A folder rests on the polished table. Corporate words begin floating through the air. Restructuring. Budget reductions. Position eliminated. The sentences sound strangely distant, almost as though they're meant for someone else. Surely they can't be talking about you. You've worked hard. You've stayed late. You've done everything right, yet within minutes your employee badge, office keys, and laptop no longer belong to you. Just like that, years of effort fit neatly into a cardboard box. The walk to your car feels much longer than usual. Each step echoes with disbelief. You don't cry, not yet. Sometimes shock arrives before sadness. You sit behind the steering wheel, staring through the windshield without turning the engine on. The parking lot continues its normal rhythm. People hurry toward meetings. Delivery trucks come and go. Some laugh together, as though nothing important has happened. It's strange how the world keeps moving, even when yours has completely stopped. Eventually, you drive home. Halfway there, another call arrives. This time it's your landlord. The words come gently but firmly. Several missed payments have finally reached their limit. Without immediate payment, you'll have to leave. You grip the steering wheel tighter. First your job, now you're home. You whisper to yourself that surely this is enough for one day. Life couldn't possibly have another surprise waiting. Could it? You arrive home only to find another envelope resting near the front door. Medical bills, unexpected expenses, numbers that feel impossible. You set the papers on the kitchen table and simply stare. The room suddenly feels unfamiliar. The walls haven't changed. The furniture remains exactly where it was yesterday. Yet everything feels different because your certainty has vanished. It's remarkable how security often lives not inside buildings but inside our expectations. When those expectations collapse, even familiar places begin feeling foreign. Hours pass quietly. Friends are busy. Family members live far away. Your phone remains mostly silent. The house grows strangely still. You wander from room to room with no clear purpose, touching bookshelves, chairs, framed photographs. Each object seems to belong to someone whose life made more sense than yours does now. Outside, clouds slowly gather. Rain begins tapping gently against the windows. The soft rhythm almost sounds comforting, almost. You sit beside the window watching tiny droplets race each other down the glass. Some disappear quickly, others merge together before falling. Life often resembles those raindrops. Separate stories unexpectedly collide, creating paths no one could have predicted. As evening approaches, hunger arrives, though eating feels impossible. You make a simple sandwich anyway. Halfway through, you realize you aren't tasting anything. Your thoughts remain trapped inside endless questions. Why today? Why all at once? Why me? No answers come. Only silence. And silence can feel surprisingly loud when you're desperate for direction. The sun slowly slips below the horizon, painting the sky with fading shades of orange and purple. Beautiful things still happen. It's just difficult to notice them when your heart feels heavy. Night settles over the neighborhood. Lights appear one by one in nearby houses. Families gather for dinner. Televisions flicker behind curtains. Dogs bark somewhere in the distance. Life continues. You, however, remain frozen between yesterday and tomorrow. The future suddenly looks like an unwritten page, with no words, no map, and no promise of what comes next. Yet hidden beneath all this uncertainty is something you cannot possibly see. A door has quietly begun moving on its hinges. Not because you've earned it, not because you've planned it, but because sometimes the greatest beginnings disguise themselves as unbearable endings. Tonight, you don't know that. Tonight, all you know is loss. And somehow, that's exactly where this remarkable journey has to begin. The night passes, though it hardly feels like sleep ever truly arrives. Instead, you drift in and out of shallow dreams where yesterday keeps replaying itself. Every time your eyes close, you're back in the conference room. You hear the careful corporate language. You see the cardboard box in your hands. You hear the landlord's voice. You watch the unopened bills waiting on the kitchen table. Morning eventually returns, but it doesn't bring relief. The sunlight slips through the curtains exactly as it did yesterday, yet everything has changed. For the first time in years, there is nowhere you have to be, no alarm demanding you rush through breakfast, no commute, no meetings, no schedule, only silence. It is a strange kind of silence, the kind that seems to fill every room no matter where you stand. You make coffee almost out of habit. Steam rises from the mug, twisting into the cool morning air. You stare at it for a long moment before taking a sip. It tastes the same. Funny how ordinary things refuse to change even when your entire life has. Outside, neighbors leave for work. Car doors slam. Engines start. Children laugh while walking toward the school bus. Life continues moving with its familiar rhythm, and somehow that makes the loneliness feel even heavier. You watch through the window like someone observing another world. Only yesterday, you belonged to that rhythm. Today you feel like a visitor. The hours stretch longer than they ever have before. You try updating your resume. Halfway through, you stop. You open job listings. They blur together after a few minutes. Every opportunity seems to ask for impossible qualifications. Every description somehow reminds you of what you've already lost. Your motivation quietly slips away. Instead, you close the laptop and lean back in your chair. The room grows still once again. Silence has a way of making old memories louder. You begin remembering your first day at that job. How excited you felt. How proud your family had been. You remember buying little things for your apartment, the comfortable chair near the window, the bookshelf, the small lamp beside your bed. Each purchase had felt like proof that life was finally becoming stable. Now those same belongings feel temporary. You wonder which ones you'll have to leave behind. The thought settles heavily in your chest. Around noon, your phone buzzes. Your heart immediately jumps. Maybe it's good news. Maybe someone has called with an opportunity. Instead, it's another automated payment reminder. Another deadline. Another number. You quietly set the phone face down. Sometimes disappointment arrives so often that even hope becomes afraid to answer the phone. The afternoon drifts by, almost unnoticed. Clouds slowly gather overhead. A gentle breeze moves through the trees outside your apartment. Leaves dance across the sidewalk as though they have no destination at all. Perhaps they don't, yet somehow the wind always carries them exactly where they need to go. You don't realize it yet, but your own life is beginning to resemble those leaves. Direction feels impossible to see from the middle of the journey. Late in the day, you decide to take a walk, not because you feel hopeful, simply because staying inside has become too difficult. The neighborhood looks exactly the same. Children ride bicycles. An elderly couple waters flowers. Someone mows a lawn. A dog happily chases a tennis ball. Simple moments. Ordinary moments. The kind of moments that remind you the world hasn't ended. Only your plans have. You continue walking until you reach a small park. There's an old wooden bench beneath a large oak tree. You sit down. The breeze feels cool against your face. Above you, branches sway gently. Sunlight filters through thousands of green leaves, creating shifting patterns across the grass. Nature seems remarkably patient. Trees never panic because winter comes. They simply stand quietly, trusting that spring knows where to find them. You wonder if people were meant to trust that way too. A question quietly enters your mind, not loud, not dramatic, just gentle. When was the last time you truly prayed? You think about it. There have been quick prayers before meals, short prayers before important meetings, occasional requests when life became stressful. But genuine conversations with God, it's been longer than you'd like to admit. Success had slowly replaced dependence, not intentionally, just gradually. Life had become comfortable enough that prayer often felt optional. Until yesterday. Now, with everything stripped away, the silence feels different, not empty. Waiting. You don't pray yet. Instead, you simply sit there beneath the tree while the wind continues rustling through the branches overhead. Somehow, the sound feels peaceful. As evening approaches, dark clouds finally release their rain. People hurry toward their cars. Umbrellas open across the park. You remain seated for another moment before walking home beneath the gentle drizzle. The cool rain lands softly on your shoulders. Oddly enough, it feels cleansing, as though yesterday's dust is slowly being washed away, not the pain, just the noise surrounding it. Back at the apartment, the rooms still feel quiet. The bills remain exactly where you left them. Nothing has improved. No miracle has arrived. No unexpected phone call. No surprise check in the mailbox. Outwardly, absolutely nothing has changed. Yet something small inside you has. Not certainty, not confidence, just the faintest willingness to stop running from the silence. Night comes again. You turn off most of the lights. The apartment grows peaceful. Outside, rain continues tapping gently against the windows. Inside, your thoughts become quieter than they were the night before. You sit beside the same window, looking into the darkness beyond the glass. Then, almost without thinking, you whisper a few simple words, not polished, not impressive, just honest. God, I don't understand. You pause. The room remains silent. I don't know what you're doing. Another pause. But if you're still here, your voice grows softer. Please don't let me walk through this alone. Nothing dramatic happens. No booming voice. No bright light. No instant solution. Only the quiet sound of rain. Yet somehow, for the first time since everything fell apart, the silence no longer feels empty. It feels shared. And sometimes, that is the very first answer heaven gives. The room remains quiet after your whispered prayer. No thunder rolls across the sky. No angel appears beside the window. No miraculous knock comes at the front door. The rain continues falling with the same gentle rhythm it had only moments before. For a brief second, you're tempted to wonder whether anyone was listening at all. Perhaps you felt that way before. You pray. You wait. Nothing seems to happen. At least nothing you can see. But the interesting thing about seeds is that they spend a long time growing where no one can watch them. Faith often works much the same way. The most important changes usually begin underground. You don't realize it yet, but something inside you has already shifted. Yesterday, every thought centered around what you had lost. Tonight, your thoughts quietly begin asking a different question. What if God hasn't left? It isn't certainty. It isn't confidence. It's simply the smallest spark of possibility. Sometimes hope begins no larger than that. You climb into bed, exhausted more from thinking than from doing. The rain eventually fades into silence. Somewhere in the distance, crickets begin singing. The cool night air drifts gently through the slightly opened window. For the first time in 2 days, your breathing slows naturally. Sleep finally arrives, not because your problems have disappeared, because your heart has stopped trying to solve everything by itself. Morning arrives softly. Golden sunlight spills across the bedroom floor once again. The same room, the same unpaid bills, the same uncertain future. Yet your first thought isn't panic. Instead, almost without realizing it, you whisper, "Thank you for another day." The words surprise even you. Yesterday you would have asked why. Today you simply say, "Thank you." Gratitude doesn't erase suffering. It changes the way suffering feels. After breakfast, you sit down with a notebook. Instead of writing endless worries, you begin making a simple list. Things you still have. Your health. Your ability to work. Your family. Friends who care, even if they're busy. The roof still over your head, for now. Another sunrise. Another opportunity to breathe. The list is much shorter than it once would have been. Yet somehow it feels heavier with meaning. Loss has a strange way of teaching the value of ordinary blessings. A phone with battery, clean drinking water, a warm blanket, simple bread, quiet mornings. Things that yesterday barely deserved a second thought now seem surprisingly precious. Later that afternoon, you decide to visit a small neighborhood grocery store. Not because you need much. Just milk, bread, a few inexpensive groceries. As you push the cart through the aisles, you notice people smiling politely at one another. A young child waves excitedly from another cart. His mother smiles apologetically. You wave back. The little boy laughs as though you've just become his newest friend. Children have an amazing gift. They rarely care about your job title. They don't know your bank account. They simply notice whether you're kind. For just a moment, your heart feels lighter. At the checkout counter, you realize you've accidentally miscalculated the total. Your card declines. Heat rises into your face. Embarrassment quietly settles in. You begin removing a few groceries from the counter. "It's okay," you tell the cashier. "I'll put these back." Before you can finish, another voice speaks behind you. "I've got it." You turn around. An elderly woman smiles warmly. Nothing extraordinary about her appearance. Simple sweater. Kind eyes. Silver hair. She gently hands her card to the cashier. "Oh no," you quickly protest. "I can't let you do that." She simply smiles again. "Years ago," she says softly, "someone helped me when I needed it most." She pauses. "Today it's my turn." You stand there speechless. The groceries aren't expensive. The money itself isn't life-changing. But the kindness feels enormous. Sometimes generosity weighs far more than dollars. As you leave the store together, you thank her again. She simply pats your shoulder. "Don't lose hope." Then she walks away toward an old blue car, parked beneath a tree. You never even learn her name. Yet somehow you'll remember her for years. Driving home, your thoughts remain unusually quiet. You begin noticing something. Since your prayer last night, nothing dramatic has happened. Your job hasn't returned. Your bills remain unpaid. Your future still feels uncertain. Yet gentle reminders keep appearing. A peaceful night's sleep. A grateful heart. A child's smile. A stranger's kindness. Tiny moments. Easy to overlook. Unless you're searching for them. Maybe miracles aren't always loud. Maybe some arrive dressed as ordinary Tuesdays. That evening, you sit outside your apartment while the sun slowly sinks behind distant rooftops. The air smells fresh after yesterday's rain. Birds glide effortlessly across the fading orange sky. You remember something your grandmother once told you when you were very young. God often whispers before he shouts. At the time, you hadn't understood what she meant. Now you begin wondering whether these quiet moments are whispers, not answers. Just reminders. Reminders that you haven't been abandoned. Reminders that goodness still exists. Reminders that heaven sometimes sends encouragement one gentle step at a time. Darkness slowly settles once more. You return inside. The apartment still looks exactly the same. Nothing has changed. Everything has changed. Before climbing into bed, you kneel once again. This prayer comes easier, not because life is easier, because honesty has become easier. God, I still don't know where this road leads. I still don't understand yesterday. I'm still afraid. But thank you for reminding me today that you haven't disappeared. The room remains silent. Yet your heart no longer mistakes silence for absence. Somewhere beyond everything you can currently see, another piece of your story is quietly moving into place. The door God intends to open hasn't appeared yet, but the hallway leading toward it has already begun. And without realizing it, you've just taken your very first peaceful step in that direction. The next morning begins without fanfare. No dramatic breakthrough. No unexpected phone call offering your old job back. No envelope stuffed with money waiting in the mailbox. Life still looks ordinary, but something inside you is no longer measuring every day by visible results. Instead, you begin noticing something quieter. Peace is slowly replacing panic. Not completely, just enough to help you breathe again. You make breakfast using the last few slices of bread left in the kitchen. The refrigerator looks emptier than you've ever seen it. You smile slightly. Only a week ago, an almost empty refrigerator would have filled you with frustration. Now it simply reminds you that you're still being provided for, one day at a time. Sometimes enough is exactly enough. After eating, you decide not to spend another day trapped inside the apartment. Your thoughts have become lighter whenever you're outdoors. The fresh air seems to untangle worries that feel impossible to solve indoors. So you put on your jacket, lock the apartment door, and begin walking through the neighborhood once again. The streets are peaceful. Morning sunlight filters through rows of maple trees. A gentle breeze carries the scent of fresh flowers from nearby gardens. Birds dart between branches, singing as though they have never known anxiety. You wonder what it would be like to trust tomorrow, the way birds seem to. They never gather years of food. They simply wake each morning, expecting what they need to appear. Perhaps faith is less about knowing tomorrow, and more about trusting today's provider. You eventually arrive at the same little park where you had prayed, beneath the oak tree. The bench is empty. You sit quietly. Children laugh somewhere across the playground. A young father helps his daughter learn to ride a bicycle. She falls. She cries for only a second. Then her father smiles, dusts off her knees, and gently encourages her to try again. Within minutes she's laughing. Watching them, another thought quietly enters your heart. The father never prevented the fall. He simply stayed close enough to help her stand. Maybe God works that way more often than you realize. Not always removing difficulty, always remaining near. You close your eyes for a few moments. The breeze brushes softly across your face. No words this time, just quiet gratitude. Eventually you stand and begin walking toward a nearby community center. You aren't sure why. Something simply tells you to keep moving, instead of returning home immediately. The building isn't large. A simple brick structure with flower boxes beneath the windows. A small handwritten sign near the entrance reads, "Neighbors helping neighbors." You pause for a moment. Curiosity wins. Inside, volunteers greet visitors with warm smiles. Some organize donated clothing. Others prepare food boxes. The atmosphere feels surprisingly joyful, not loud, not forced, just peaceful. A middle-aged volunteer notices you standing near the doorway. "First time here?" You nod. "I was just walking by." "Well," she says warmly, "you're welcome whether you're looking for help or looking to help." Those words stay with you. Looking for help. looking to help. Until now, you've only thought about what you needed. You hadn't considered that perhaps you still had something valuable to give. The volunteer introduces herself as Sarah. She explains that they prepare meals for elderly residents and families going through difficult seasons. One volunteer didn't arrive that morning. "If you have an hour," she says with a hopeful smile, "we could really use another pair of hands." For a second you hesitate. Shouldn't you be spending every minute searching for work? Shouldn't you be worrying about bills? Yet another thought gently interrupts your anxiety. You've already spent days worrying. Perhaps 1 hour spent serving someone else won't make things worse. You smile. "I'd be happy to help." Sarah hands you an apron. Within minutes, you're chopping vegetables alongside people you've never met before. Conversations drift naturally around the room. No one asks about your resume. No one measures your success. No one seems impressed by titles. They simply enjoy working together. It feels refreshing. An elderly volunteer tells funny stories from 40 years ago. Another quietly hums old hymns while stirring soup. Someone accidentally drops a spoon, and everyone laughs together. For the first time since losing everything, you catch yourself laughing too. The sound surprises you. It has been missing longer than you realized. Hours pass more quickly than expected. Before leaving, Sarah thanks you. You helped more than you know. You shake your head. "I think you all helped me." She smiles knowingly. That's usually how it works. As you prepare to leave, another volunteer approaches. He's an older gentleman with gentle eyes and silver hair. "I've seen you here before," he says. "You look confused. I don't think we've met." He chuckles. "No, not here. At the grocery store." Then you recognize him. He had been standing a few people behind you when the elderly woman paid for your groceries. "I remember watching that happen," he says. "She does things like that often." He smiles toward the window. She believes every act of kindness plants a seed. The words immediately remind you of your prayer only 2 nights earlier. Seeds, growing where no one can see them. The gentleman continues. "You know, kindness has a strange habit." "What do you mean?" "It rarely stops with one person." He gestures toward the volunteers. Someone encourages you. Then someday, you encourage someone else. You stand quietly, letting those words settle. Perhaps that's exactly what's happening. One stranger's kindness led you here today. Today your hands prepared meals for families you've never met. Tomorrow, who knows? Walking home that afternoon feels different. Nothing material has changed. Your wallet isn't fuller. Your future still isn't certain. But your heart feels stronger. You realize something important. Hope isn't always found by staring at your own problems. Sometimes it quietly returns while you're helping carry someone else's. As the evening sun paints the sky in soft shades of gold, you glance upward. The same sky that witnessed your darkest day now seems brighter somehow. Not because the sky changed. Because you did. Without realizing it, another invisible door has quietly opened inside your heart. And before long, one in the outside world will begin opening too. The following morning arrives, wrapped in quiet confidence. Not confidence, because every problem has disappeared. Not confidence, because your future has suddenly become clear. Rather, the gentle confidence that comes from discovering you don't have to face uncertainty alone. The apartment still feels small. The unpaid bills still rest neatly on the kitchen table. Your savings remain dangerously low. Nothing about your circumstances has magically improved overnight. Yet your heart no longer races the moment your eyes open. Instead, your first thought is surprisingly simple. Let's see what today brings. Only a few days ago, those words would have sounded impossible. You had wanted every answer immediately. Now you're beginning to understand that life isn't always revealed 1 year at a time. Sometimes God simply gives enough light for the next step, no more, no less. After breakfast, you open your notebook again. Yesterday it held a list of blessings. Today you begin writing another list, not worries, possibilities. The page isn't very long. Update your resume. Visit the community center again. Apply for 3 new jobs. Call an old friend. Pray before making decisions. 5 simple steps. Nothing extraordinary, yet looking at the page makes the future seem less overwhelming. Mountains often become climbable when you stop staring at the summit and simply take the next step. You smile quietly. Perhaps that is today's lesson. Outside, the air feels fresh after another cool night. The neighborhood has become strangely familiar in a new way. Instead of rushing through it as you once did on your way to work, you actually notice things. A squirrel darting across a fence, fresh flowers blooming beside a mailbox, an elderly couple holding hands during their morning walk. The world seems full of small miracles that busy people rarely have time to see. As you pass the little park again, you notice workers planting young trees near the walking path. One small tree catches your attention. Its trunk is thin. Its branches barely reach above your shoulders. It doesn't look impressive. One gust of strong wind seems capable of knocking it over. Yet beside it stands a sturdy wooden stake tied gently with soft rope. The support won't remain forever, only until the tree becomes strong enough to stand by itself. You pause for a moment. Life has quietly given you another picture. Perhaps difficult seasons aren't proof that you're weak. Perhaps they're the season when support matters most. Even trees aren't expected to stand alone while they're still growing. You continue walking toward the community center. The volunteers greet you with familiar smiles. Sarah waves cheerfully from across the room. "I was hoping you'd come back." "So was I," you admit with a laugh. The words surprise you. Just a week ago, you couldn't imagine saying you were looking forward to anything. Today, helping others has become something you genuinely anticipate. The kitchen is busier than before. Several families need meal deliveries. You spend the morning packing food boxes. As you work, conversations drift naturally from one table to another. Someone shares a funny childhood story. Another volunteer talks about learning to bake bread after retirement. An older gentleman tells everyone about accidentally locking himself out of his own house twice in 1 week. The room erupts with laughter. You notice something beautiful. None of these people pretend life has been easy. Each carries their own scars. Yet somehow they've learned not to let hardship become the loudest voice in the room. Joy isn't the absence of struggle. Sometimes it's simply choosing not to let struggle tell the whole story. Later that afternoon, Sarah hands you a clipboard. "We're delivering meals today." She pauses. "Would you like to come?" You nod immediately. Together with another volunteer, you begin visiting homes throughout the neighborhood. The first stop belongs to an elderly widower. His house is small but spotless. He welcomes everyone with genuine warmth. While Sarah prepares his meal, he begins telling stories about his late wife. He smiles far more than he cries. Love still shines through every memory. As you leave, he shakes your hand. "Thank you for coming." You quietly realize something. He probably blessed you more than you blessed him. The next delivery goes to a young mother caring for 2 energetic children. The little ones race excitedly toward the food boxes as though Christmas has arrived early. Their laughter fills the tiny apartment. Watching their joy over something so simple reminds you how easily gratitude grows in humble places. The final visit surprises you most. A middle-aged man opens the door using a walking cane. He thanks the volunteers warmly before recognizing your face. "Weren't you at the community kitchen yesterday?" You smile. "Yes." He nods thoughtfully. "I thought so." Then he says something unexpected. "I almost didn't answer the door today." You look confused. "I've been feeling very alone lately." He glances toward the meal. "This isn't just food." He smiles gently. "It reminds me somebody remembered I exist." Those words stay with you all afternoon. Somebody remembered I exist. How many people quietly carry that same invisible loneliness? You think back to your own apartment only days earlier. The silence, the fear, the feeling of being forgotten. Perhaps God had been teaching you compassion through your own pain, not because he wanted you to suffer, but because someday you'd recognize suffering in someone else. As the sun begins setting, you return to the community center tired but strangely energized. Sarah thanks everyone before the volunteers head home. You made a difference today. Walking home beneath the soft evening sky, you realize something remarkable. You spent almost the entire day serving other people. Not once did you obsess over your unpaid bills. Not once did fear completely control your thoughts. Your problems still exist, but they no longer define every moment. That night, you kneel beside your bed once more. Your prayer is different now, not desperate, not demanding. Simply honest. God, I'm beginning to understand. Maybe waiting isn't wasted time. Maybe you're doing work inside me while I'm waiting for you to do work around me. If that's true, help me keep trusting you. Outside, stars quietly appear one by one across the dark sky. Inside, peace settles gently into your heart. The answers still haven't arrived, but you're beginning to discover that sometimes the waiting itself is part. Tonight we wander into a quiet valley, where every cobblestone seems to remember an old story, every breeze carries the scent of fresh bread and pine, and every lantern glows just brightly enough to make you wonder what might be waiting beyond the next corner. You're about to spend the evening in a place where one ordinary man quietly holds on to his faith, while almost everyone around him laughs at it. It might sound peaceful, but don't get too comfortable just yet, because you probably won't survive this, at least not if you were expected to carry this much patience without losing your temper. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, let me know your location and your local time down in the comments. It's always fascinating to see where tonight's travelers are joining from. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing at the edge of a small fictional town tucked between rolling green hills. The houses are built from weathered stone, their rooftops patched with faded clay tiles that have survived countless seasons. Chickens wander across dusty paths without any sense of urgency, and somewhere in the distance a blacksmith's hammer rings with a slow, comforting rhythm. At first glance, everything seems perfectly ordinary. Then you notice something unusual. People here smile often, but not every smile is kind. As you stroll deeper into the marketplace, conversations suddenly become quieter whenever one particular man passes by. Some people shake their heads. Others chuckle under their breath. A few children copy what the adults do, laughing even though they don't truly understand why. The man simply nods politely. He never argues. He never hurries. He keeps walking with calm steps, greeting every person he meets as though each one were an old friend. His name hardly matters for now. In stories like this, names often become less important than choices. What matters is that he believes there is purpose, even in difficult days, and he refuses to let bitterness settle inside his heart. You continue following him from a respectful distance. He reaches a tiny cottage near the edge of the fields. The fence leans slightly to one side. The vegetable garden is modest, and climbing vines wrap around the porch posts, as if nature itself has decided to help decorate the place. Nothing about the home suggests wealth. Nothing suggests power. Yet it somehow feels richer than many larger houses you passed earlier. The man places a basket of vegetables on a wooden table before quietly beginning his afternoon chores. A neighbor walking past laughs loudly. "Still talking to the sky?" he calls out. Several others nearby laugh with him. The man simply smiles. "I hope you have a peaceful evening," he replies. No anger, no sarcasm, just simple kindness. That response seems to disappoint the crowd even more than an argument would have. You begin noticing that this isn't an isolated moment. It's a routine. Every day someone has another joke. Every day someone invents another rumor. Some claim his faith has made him foolish. Others insist he's wasting his life, hoping for things nobody can prove. The children repeat the same words because they've heard the adults say them hundreds of times. The cycle continues with remarkable consistency. Morning laughter, afternoon whispers, evening gossip, yet every sunrise begins the same way for the quiet man. He steps outside before dawn while the village still sleeps. Mist hangs gently over the fields, and tiny drops of dew sparkle on blades of grass like scattered pieces of glass catching the first hint of sunlight. He closes his eyes. He breathes deeply. He offers a quiet prayer that no one else hears, not because he wants to impress anyone, not because he expects applause, simply because it has become the foundation of his life. You never hear the exact words. The wind carries them away before they reach you. Perhaps that's fitting. Some conversations are meant to remain private. As the morning grows brighter, birds begin singing from nearby trees. The town slowly awakens. Doors creak open, smoke rises from chimneys. Merchants arrange their goods beneath colorful awnings. Life continues exactly as it always has. Yet beneath the ordinary routine, something feels as though it's quietly waiting, not dramatic, not loud, just unfinished. Later that afternoon, you wander through the marketplace again. An elderly woman struggles to lift a heavy sack of grain. Before anyone else notices, the quiet man walks over and carries it to her doorstep. She thanks him warmly. Across the street, however, another group watches with amused expressions. "There he goes," one says, "trying to earn blessings again." The others laugh. You expect frustration to flash across his face. Instead, he simply returns to his work. His peace seems strangely unshaken. As daylight begins fading into shades of gold, the hills surrounding the town glow beneath the setting sun. Children race home before supper. Farmers guide tired horses toward their barns. The blacksmith cools his forge. The village settles into its familiar evening rhythm. You pause beside a small stream, where the quiet water reflects the colors of the sky. Everything appears calm. Yet stories rarely begin with the extraordinary. They begin with ordinary people making ordinary choices that slowly shape extraordinary moments. Tonight you've witnessed only one choice repeated again and again. Kindness instead of resentment. Patience instead of pride. Hope instead of despair. No miracle has appeared. No impossible event has interrupted the day. Only the steady rhythm of someone refusing to become the person everyone expects him to be. And sometimes, the smallest acts of faithfulness become the first stones laid on a road whose destination nobody can yet imagine. The valley grows darker as stars begin appearing one by one above the rooftops. Lanterns flicker to life. A cool breeze drifts through the narrow streets. The town falls asleep, believing tomorrow will be exactly like today. But somewhere beyond what anyone can see, the next chapter of this fictional tale is already beginning to unfold. The next morning arrives so quietly that you almost miss it. The first light slips over the hills, painting the rooftops with soft shades of gold, while a thin blanket of mist curls around the empty streets. A rooster announces the dawn with far more confidence than accuracy, followed by another rooster somewhere across town that seems determined to correct him. If medieval alarm clocks had customer reviews, they probably wouldn't score very highly. The fictional village wakes one household at a time. Windows creak open. Wooden doors swing outward. Fresh bread begins baking in stone ovens, filling the cool air with a warm, comforting scent that makes breakfast feel like the greatest invention in history. You find yourself walking once again toward the little cottage on the edge of the fields. The quiet believer is already awake. He waters a row of vegetables with slow, careful movements, treating each small plant as though it deserves the same attention as the tallest tree. A robin lands nearby, tilting its head curiously before hopping closer without fear. For a few peaceful moments, the world feels perfectly balanced. Then the first voices arrive. There he is. I wondered how long it would take. A pair of merchants stroll past, carrying bundles of cloth toward the marketplace. One of them shakes his head with an exaggerated sigh. Still praying every morning? The believer smiles gently. Good morning. The merchants exchange amused glances. We weren't asking for a greeting. I know, he replies calmly. His answer is so simple that it leaves them unsure how to respond. Without another word, he continues watering the garden. You notice something interesting. The people who mock him always seem to expect a fight. They prepare themselves for anger. They almost hope for it. When it never comes, they walk away looking strangely unsatisfied. As the morning grows brighter, the marketplace fills with familiar sounds. Wagons rattle across uneven stones. Children weave between adults, while pretending not to be chasing one another. A baker proudly places fresh loaves on display, and the irresistible smell spreads through the square like an invisible invitation. The believer arrives carrying a small basket of vegetables. He greets everyone he passes. Some answer warmly. Many ignore him. A few roll their eyes. One young man laughs loudly enough for everyone nearby to hear. So he calls, "Has your faith made you rich yet?" Several people chuckle. The believer glances down at his worn sandals before looking back with a peaceful smile. No. Then why keep believing? He considers the question for a moment. Because peace isn't something I measure with coins. The crowd falls unusually quiet, not convinced, not transformed, simply surprised. The young man shrugs. Suit yourself. The conversation ends there. Life moves on. You begin noticing that patience has its own quiet rhythm. The believer never seems hurried. When someone speaks harshly, he waits before answering. When someone interrupts him, he lets them finish. When someone laughs at him, he doesn't rush to defend himself. It isn't weakness. It feels more like strength that has learned not to shout. Later that afternoon, clouds drift lazily across the blue sky. A farmer struggles to repair a broken fence after one stubborn goat decides that rules are merely suggestions. Without being asked, the believer kneels beside him and begins helping. Together they replace loose boards, straighten crooked posts, and gather scattered tools. The farmer wipes sweat from his forehead. You didn't have to help, I know. Then why did you? The believer smiles. Because you needed help. The farmer nods thoughtfully. For the first time all day, nobody laughs. As you continue walking through the village, you realize that not everyone joins the mockery. Some simply stay silent. Perhaps they fear becoming targets themselves. Perhaps they've grown so used to hearing cruel words that they no longer notice them. Silence, you discover, can spread through a crowd almost as quickly as laughter. That evening, rain begins falling, not a fierce storm. Just a gentle shower that taps softly against rooftops and turns dusty roads into glistening paths. Most villagers hurry indoors. The believer notices an elderly widow struggling to carry firewood through the rain. Without hesitation, he lifts the heavy bundle onto his own shoulders and walks beside her to her cottage. His clothes become soaked. His boots sink into the muddy road. Yet he never complains. The widow thanks him with tired eyes and a grateful smile. You've helped me more times than I can count. He simply nods. Take care of yourself. As he walks home through the steady rain, you notice something remarkable. No audience remains. Nobody is watching. There are no cheers, no applause, no praise. He helps because help is needed. Nothing more, nothing less. Night settles over the valley once again. Rainwater drips from the rooftops, while lanterns cast warm circles of light onto the quiet streets. Inside their homes, villagers tell stories over simple meals. Some repeat jokes about the believer. Others hardly mention him at all. Yet somewhere deep beneath their familiar conversations, tiny questions have begun taking root. Why does he never answer hatred with hatred? Why doesn't he grow bitter? What allows someone to remain peaceful after years of ridicule? No one says those questions aloud. Not yet. Instead, they set them aside like unopened letters, waiting for another day. You leave the marketplace behind and stand once more beneath the wide night sky. Stars slowly emerge between drifting clouds. The village grows silent. Tomorrow, the mockery will almost certainly continue. The believer knows that. So do you. Yet something has shifted ever so slightly. Not in the streets, not in the buildings, but in a few quiet hearts that are beginning, almost unwillingly, to wonder whether true strength might look very different from what they had always imagined. The rain has passed. When you step outside the following morning, the village feels freshly washed, as though the earth itself had enjoyed a peaceful night's sleep. Tiny drops of water cling to leaves, sparkling whenever the rising sun peeks through drifting clouds. Every rooftop glistens. Every garden seems a little greener than yesterday. You wander toward the marketplace before most people have arrived. The streets are unusually quiet. A sleepy cat stretches across a warm stone wall, completely unconcerned with human worries. Somewhere nearby, a baker slides fresh loaves into an oven while humming a tune that has probably been passed from one generation to the next. The peaceful believer is already awake, not because anyone expects him to be, not because someone ordered him to work, simply because he has learned to greet each day with gratitude before it asks anything of him. He sweeps the small path leading to his cottage. He repairs a loose wooden step. He fills a shallow bowl with fresh water, and within minutes a pair of small birds flutter down to drink. You smile. The birds seem to trust him without needing an explanation. Soon the familiar rhythm of village life begins once more. Doors open. Merchants arrive. Farmers lead carts filled with vegetables. Children race through narrow streets pretending to be fearless adventurers, even though one tiny puddle still manages to stop half of them in their tracks. Then, almost as predictably as sunrise itself, the laughter begins. There goes the dreamer. Still hoping the heavens notice him. Someone chuckles loudly. Another joins in. Before long, several voices overlap until the marketplace echoes with quiet amusement. You glance toward the believer. Perhaps today will be different. Perhaps today he'll finally answer back. Instead, he notices a little boy trying unsuccessfully to lift a basket nearly as large as himself. Without hesitation, he kneels. "May I help?" The boy nods. Together they carry the basket across the square. When they arrive, the grateful mother thanks him warmly. The people who had been laughing fall strangely silent, not because their opinions have changed, because kindness has interrupted the performance they expected. Cruelty often depends on an audience. Compassion quietly changes the scene. Later that morning, you notice a wealthy merchant arguing with an elderly customer over the price of grain. Voices rise, hands wave dramatically. The disagreement grows louder with every passing moment. The believer happens to walk by. He doesn't interrupt. He waits. When both have finished speaking, he gently suggests a compromise that allows each person to leave with dignity. To everyone's surprise, both agree. The argument ends. The merchant scratches his beard thoughtfully. "I expected you to take sides. I was hoping both of you could leave peacefully." The merchant doesn't know what to say. Neither do the onlookers. You continue walking beside the believer as he heads toward the fields beyond the village. The path winds gently between rows of wheat that sway like golden waves whenever the breeze passes through. Butterflies drift lazily among colorful wildflowers. Somewhere in the distance, sheep graze peacefully beneath scattered oak trees. The valley seems wonderfully unconcerned with the opinions of people. Nature doesn't join gossip. The wind carries every voice away equally. You find that strangely comforting. As the afternoon sun climbs higher, the believer notices an old wooden bridge crossing a narrow stream. One of its planks has broken. Anyone crossing carelessly could stumble. Without announcing his intentions, he gathers tools from nearby homes. A carpenter lends him nails. A farmer lends him timber. An elderly woman offers cool water. Together, without speeches or celebration, they repair the bridge. By evening, dozens of villagers safely cross it. Many never realize who fixed it. The believer seems perfectly content with that. Recognition was never the goal. As the sun begins sinking toward the western hills, the village children gather beside the repaired bridge. One little girl stops beside him. "Did you build this?" He smiles. "A lot of people helped. But you started." He simply shrugs. Sometimes, someone only needs to take the first step. The little girl thinks about that. Children often ask the simplest questions. They also remember the simplest answers. Nearby, several adults watch the conversation from a distance. One whispers quietly, "I don't understand him." Another folds his arms, "Neither do I." A third remains silent. Silence, you notice again, has begun appearing more often than laughter. The mockery hasn't disappeared, but certainty has. As evening settles across the valley, warm orange light paints every rooftop and every tree with gentle colors. The believer returns home carrying an empty tool bag. His clothes are dusty, his hands are scratched from repairing the bridge. He looks tired, yet there's a quiet contentment in the way he walks. Inside his small cottage, he lights a single lantern. The soft glow spills through the window into the gathering darkness. He prepares a simple meal: fresh bread, vegetable soup, a small cup of water. Nothing extravagant, nothing wasted. Outside, the stars slowly begin appearing once again. You sit beneath an old oak tree, overlooking the village. From here, every house looks peaceful. No one can see the arguments that happen during the day. No one can hear the whispered jokes. Distance has a curious way of softening sharp edges. You think back over everything you've witnessed. The believer never demanded respect. He never tried to prove himself better than anyone else. He simply continued choosing kindness, even when no reward seemed to follow. In this fictional village, where opinions spread faster than truth, that choice may be the rarest thing of all. Far beyond the hills, unseen by anyone below, dark clouds gather on the horizon, not the kind that bring ordinary rain. The kind that quietly remind every traveler that seasons eventually change. The villagers don't notice them. The believer doesn't notice them. Neither do most people settling into sleep. But you do. And somehow, deep inside, you sense that the peaceful routine of this little valley cannot remain unchanged forever. Something is approaching, not with noise, not with thunder, but one quiet day at a time. Morning returns with a cool breeze, drifting across the valley, carrying the scent of damp earth and wildflowers. You step onto the quiet road, just as the first rays of sunlight spill over the hills, turning every drop of dew into a tiny point of gold. The fictional village stretches awake one gentle sound at a time. A rooster calls from somewhere beyond the barns. A shepherd whistles softly as a flock of sheep begins its slow journey toward fresh pasture. Smoke rises from chimneys in thin, graceful ribbons, promising warm breakfasts and another ordinary day. At least, everyone believes it will be ordinary. You already know that stories rarely announce the moment they begin to change. The believer opens the wooden door of his little cottage with the same peaceful smile you've come to expect. His home remains simple. A rough wooden table, a single lantern, shelves holding a few carefully repaired bowls, a small window overlooking the fields where sunlight dances across rows of vegetables. Nothing has become easier for him. His clothes are still worn. His tools are still old. His hands still carry the rough marks of years spent working the land. Yet he greets the morning as though it were a precious gift instead of another difficult test. You follow him toward the marketplace. The familiar whispers arrive almost immediately. Still smiling? I suppose today will finally be the day he realizes he's wasting his life. Several villagers laugh quietly. One young merchant folds his arms. I'd lose patience after a week. An older man nearby shakes his head. He has lasted years. The merchant shrugs. Then he's either very foolish or very stubborn. You notice something different. The laughter isn't quite as confident as it once was. It still exists, but now it shares space with curiosity. The believer simply nods to everyone he passes. He buys a small sack of flour. He thanks the baker. He wishes the blacksmith a peaceful day. Even those who ignore him receive the same warm greeting. Kindness, you realize, has become part of his routine rather than his reaction. Later that morning, dark clouds drift slowly across the distant hills, not threatening, just enough to cover the bright blue sky with patches of silver. The wind grows cooler. Farmers begin gathering tools a little earlier than usual. One elderly farmer struggles to push a heavy wagon, whose wheel has become trapped in soft mud beside the road. Several people notice. Most continue walking. They have their own work to finish. Without hesitation, the believer sets down his basket. He presses both hands against the wagon. The farmer joins him. Together they push. The wheel refuses to move. Mud splashes across their boots. The believer laughs softly. Seems the wagon has decided to stay. The farmer chuckles despite himself. Perhaps it's enjoying the view. Together they try again. This time the wheel lurches free. The wagon rolls safely onto firmer ground. The old farmer wipes sweat from his brow. I owe you. The believer smiles. You owe me nothing. As they continue talking, several villagers quietly watch from across the road. No one laughs this time. Instead, one woman whispers to another. He never asks for anything in return. Her friend nods thoughtfully. I've noticed. Small observations begin spreading through the village like seeds carried by the wind. Not dramatic, not loud. Simply impossible to ignore forever. The afternoon brings stronger winds. Branches sway gently above the narrow paths leading into the surrounding forest. Children who had been playing near the stream hurry home as their parents call them inside. The believer notices a bundle of firewood stacked beside an elderly widow's cottage. The pile has fallen apart. Logs are scattered across the yard. Without knocking, he quietly begins gathering them into neat stacks. The widow opens her door. You've already helped me this week. He smiles. Today needed helping too. She laughs warmly. You always find simple answers. Simple answers are sometimes enough. As evening approaches, you walk with him beyond the village toward the hill overlooking the valley. From here, everything appears peaceful. The stone cottages glow softly beneath the fading sunlight. Thin trails of smoke drift lazily upward. Fields stretch across the countryside like enormous green blankets, stitched together by winding dirt paths. The believer sits on a weathered rock overlooking the village. He says nothing, neither do you. Some moments don't require conversation. The breeze moves gently through tall grass. Birds circle overhead before disappearing toward distant trees. Far beyond the horizon, darker clouds gather once again. You remember noticing them yesterday. Now they seem a little closer, still distant, still silent, but no longer easy to dismiss. Back in the village, evening settles over every street. Lanterns begin glowing one by one. Families gather for supper. Children grow sleepy after another day of running through muddy paths and pretending sticks are magnificent swords. Inside the tavern, conversations drift from farming to weather. Someone mentions the believer. He helped old Thomas again. Another replies quietly. He helped my sister last week. A third shrugs. I still don't understand him. An older woman smiles gently. Perhaps not everything needs understanding before it deserves respect. The table falls quiet. Outside, the believer returns home beneath a sky slowly filling with stars. He pauses beside his garden. The vegetables sway gently in the evening breeze. He checks each row one last time before stepping inside his cottage. The lantern glows warmly through the small window. Its light seems tiny against the growing darkness. Yet from where you stand, it is impossible to miss. Perhaps that is how quiet goodness often works. It does not chase attention. It simply shines where it stands. The valley falls asleep, believing tomorrow will look much like today. But somewhere beyond the hills, unseen paths are already beginning to cross. The season is changing. The village does not yet realize it. Neither do those who continue to mock. For now, all that remains is another peaceful night, another sky filled with stars, and another page waiting patiently to be turned. A pale silver mist settles over the fictional valley before sunrise, softening every rooftop, every tree, and every winding path, until the entire landscape feels as though it has been wrapped inside a quiet dream. You walk slowly through the sleeping village, your footsteps barely making a sound on the damp cobblestones. Somewhere in the distance, an owl finishes its nightly watch just as the first songbird begins welcoming the morning. The world seems caught between yesterday and tomorrow. Nothing appears unusual, yet something feels different. Perhaps it is simply the way people look at one another now. Perhaps it is the memory of countless small acts of kindness that have quietly accumulated over the past weeks. Or perhaps every story reaches a moment when invisible changes begin long before visible ones. The believer steps outside his little cottage carrying only a simple lantern. The flame glows warmly against the cool blue dawn before he gently blows it out as daylight slowly brightens the horizon. He walks toward a quiet hill overlooking the valley. You follow several steps behind. Neither of you speaks. The breeze moves through tall grass with a soft whisper that almost sounds like distant waves upon a peaceful shore. He reaches the top of the hill, just as the first rays of sunlight stretch across the fields. For several long moments he simply stands there, watching the village awaken. Smoke rises from chimneys. Farmers prepare their tools. Children begin chasing one another between cottages. Life continues with its familiar rhythm. Finally, he kneels. His hands rest gently upon the grass. His eyes close. He begins a quiet prayer. You cannot hear every word. The wind carries most of them away before they reach you. What remains is not a request for riches, not a wish for revenge, not even a plea that those who mocked him would finally be embarrassed. Instead, his quiet voice carries wishes for peace, for wisdom, for strength to remain kind even when kindness feels difficult. He prays that bitterness never finds a permanent home inside his heart. The hill remains silent. Only the breeze answers. When he finally opens his eyes, nothing around him appears different. The sun continues rising. Birds continue singing. The village continues waking. No brilliant light fills the sky. No mysterious voice echoes across the valley. Only another ordinary morning in a fictional village. He smiles anyway, as though quiet hope itself were enough. Later that morning, the marketplace becomes busier than usual. Travelers from neighboring villages arrive with wagons full of grain, cloth, pottery, and fresh fruit. New faces fill the streets. New conversations drift through the square. One traveler notices the believer helping an elderly merchant organize fallen baskets. "You know him?" the traveler asks another villager. The villager shrugs. "Everyone knows him." "Is he important?" A brief silence follows. "No," the villager answers. Then, after another thoughtful pause, "Although sometimes I wonder if we've misunderstood what important means." The traveler glances toward the believer. He sees nothing extraordinary. Only a man, quietly helping someone without expecting praise. The afternoon brings warm sunshine after several cool mornings. Children gather beside the repaired bridge, skipping smooth stones across the stream. A young girl accidentally drops her favorite wooden toy into the water. She gasps. The current carries it away. Before panic has time to grow, the believer carefully steps into the shallow stream, retrieves the toy, and returns it with a cheerful smile. The little girl hugs the toy tightly. "Thank you." Her joyful laughter echoes across the water. Several nearby adults witness the scene. One smiles. Another lowers his eyes thoughtfully. The loud jokes that once filled every corner of the village seem noticeably fewer now. Not gone. Simply quieter. As evening approaches, clouds painted with shades of orange and pink drift peacefully above the valley. The believer finishes repairing a broken garden gate outside his cottage. His tools are old. The wood is weathered. The repair is simple, yet he works carefully, believing even small things deserve honest effort. You sit nearby, beneath a large oak tree. Neither of you hurries. The slow pace itself becomes comforting. A passing shepherd pauses. "I've watched you help people for years." The believer looks up. The shepherd continues. "Doesn't it ever become exhausting?" The believer considers the question. "Sometimes." "Then why continue?" He smiles gently. "Because kindness isn't easier when everyone notices it." He pauses. "It's more important when no one does." The shepherd nods slowly before continuing home. His footsteps disappear along the winding path. The valley grows quieter. Evening birds replace the songs of morning. Lanterns begin glowing one by one throughout the village. Warm light spills from windows. Families gather for supper. Children laugh inside cozy homes. Life appears wonderfully ordinary. Yet somewhere beyond the distant hills, the season continues changing. The wind carries a cooler breath tonight. Clouds gather just a little sooner than before. No one pays them much attention. Storms come and go. Weather changes. That is simply life. The believer stands once more beside his small garden. He looks toward the darkening horizon for only a moment before returning inside his cottage. He closes the wooden door softly behind him. The lantern shines through the little window exactly as it always has, a single warm light against the vast evening. You remain outside beneath the stars. The village sleeps peacefully. No one knows what tomorrow will bring. No one realizes that the quiet prayer offered upon the hill this morning will remain in the hearts of those who witnessed the believer's life. Not because they heard every word, but because they had already begun seeing those words reflected in his actions. Sometimes the strongest message is never spoken loudly. Sometimes it is lived. One quiet day at a time. The night deepens, crickets sing, the breeze grows gentler, and somewhere beyond the horizon, the next chapter of this fictional journey patiently waits for dawn.